What's that? Yeah. I mean, once I can sneak out the side door if we need to go get something.
All right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the May 14th, 2024 council meeting of the Village of Lytton. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone to turn off their videos, mute your microphones, and allow council to begin the proceedings. Just to let you know, we're all being recorded and broadcasted on the Village of Lytton YouTube channel. If anyone is looking for a video recording of this meeting or a past meeting, you can go to the Village YouTube channel and watch it there. Thank you, Your Worship. You may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. So first I want to recognize that the Village of Lytton is situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Ntlaka'pamilj people. And in accordance with our council procedure bylaw, we have Kathy Walter here. Walter's here this evening as Deputy Corporate Officer. So before we adopt the agenda, we have an amendment to make. So item number 6, which is a presentation of the Mayor on the audited financial statements, we're going to move that item to right after the reports from Mayor and Council. So can I please have a motion? Sorry, for accepting the adopting the agenda as amended. So Councillor Lightfoot. And a seconder, toss, all those in favor, carried. Now adoption of the special council meeting of May the 7th. So we need a motion to move, toss. Thank you. And
I'll second
seconder, Can, all those in favor?
Oh, there's
Sorry, are there any errors or omissions?
yes. Just in the TOS report, I did not attend SILGA. I think there's a comment in the minutes that says attended SILGA.
Oh, you're not.
To council, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Was there any other errors or omissions? No. And all those in favor? Carried. All right, we'll move right on then to public comment, and I'll turn it back over to CEO Storchenko.
Thank you, Your Worship. So members of the public are now invited to comment on matters related to the agenda. So if you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. You can find that by clicking the reactions at the bottom of your screen and then click on raise hand. So when it's your turn, I'll read your name and you'll be asked to unmute yourself. You'll get a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Speakers are asked to please state their name, their address, and the agenda item they are speaking to. So if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. I'll call for a second time. If anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. And a call for a third time. If anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. Your Worship, I don't see anybody. Is there anyone there at Parish Hall?
No, there's no one here this evening.
All right, thank you. That completes the public comment portion of the meeting. And back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move right on to item number 8, which is staff reports. And we have CAO Burkett to address item number 1.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. Good evening, everybody. This first item on the agenda is we're looking for the approval to enter into a contract to complete a tourism economic development strategy. So we spoke about this a few weeks ago before the item was posted on BC Bid. We had received a grant from the Ministry of Forests back in 2021 that was intended for economic development initiatives. And so when we looked at the economic recovery report that was completed last year by O'Leary and Associates, there was some long-term strategies identified around the tourism potential of the village. So this is the first step in moving those recommendations forward. So we proposed and we posted a RFP on BC Bid, looking for a contractor to work with us, with the Lytton Chamber of Commerce, with the local First Nations, and with Destination BC to develop an economic kind of a tourism focused economic development strategy. So looking at potential products that could be successful in this region from a tourism perspective. We posted the bid on April the 15th. We had 8 submissions. 4 of the submissions were not considered because they were proposing more of a tourism marketing plan, and we're not to that point yet. We don't have any products to market. So this is one step before that, often referred to as destination development. So we were down to four different proponents. The prices were all very similar. There wasn't a lot of differentiation between them, and but we had other criteria we were scoring on, such as project experience and the staff that they were putting forward that would work on the project and their experience. So group of 3, we all scored them independently and then got together to compare notes. And the proposal from Stormy Lake Enterprises is the one that scored the highest amongst the 3 of us. So we're recommending a contract with them.
Great, thank you. So we do have a recommended motion. Who would like to put that forward? Councillor Lightfoot. And a seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. Now, are there any comments or questions regarding this? Councillor Lightfoot.
So once this is awarded, can I anticipate that they'll be starting like right away?
Yes, they're prepared to start right away.
And is part of their scope to include surrounding electoral areas and bands? Is there any coordination with that?
They'll be looking at the whole region and what the opportunity is, but they're not going to repeat what's previously been done as sort of the Fraser Canyon strategy. They're not looking to repeat that. It's looking at, it's Lytton focused because the funding was provided for Lytton, but we recognize our success is intricately tied to everything around us, right? So we'll be working with all the partners in the region for sure.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions regarding this? Councillor McCann?
Diane, I'm just thinking it through and kind of playing ahead the movie in my mind. So what's the timeline? So there'll be a series of meetings and information gathering, and then there'll be some kind of a development and proposal sort of stage. And then there'll be a reporting back kind of thing, I presume. Am I reading this right? And so yes. When would the report back be expected?
That's a very good question. I can't remember for sure. It's either September 30th or October 31st was the due date for the final report to be delivered to the village. And so included in their proposal is a very detailed project plan that shows all the steps that will get us to that date. Yeah. And it starts with them coming to the village and spending some days in the village, getting to know the place a little bit and understand. One of their consultants has worked in our region previously, so is familiar with the area. And the firm itself is from Nanoose Bay, so not very far away.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you for that. Okay, so next we have the Director of Development, and I believe we have Berthe on. No, maybe it's not Berthe. Who is presenting this? Around the services activity report.
It is Berthe. She's on here.
It is Berthe. Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my slides. Let's get the right one going here. Come on. You can do it. Oh, I had a feeling this would happen again. Okay, I'm coming to you. It's Berthe de Clue, part of the planning team for Lytton, and I'm coming to you from Kelowna. And judging by where you guys address, we're not quite as warm and sunny as you are, which is kind of shocking. As I like to do on a monthly basis, I'd like to give you the Development Services Activity Report. And I have a few things to present to you today. One of the things that I just wanted to highlight is I noticed in my report, the new activity is in green. The activity from last month is in blue, and black is previous. So I think I'm just going to differentiate, if that's good with you, the two previous months. However, on my slides, I got creative and mine are red on my slides. So let's just start with what's happened in the planning world. As you recall, at the last council meeting, you supported the temporary use permit for the worker housing at 1120 Trans-Canada Highway. And that was the last application that the planning department has received. More interesting, the building side has had a little bit of action. There are two more permits that were issued. One is at 145 Main Street, it was a commercial permit, and 437 Fraser Street is a single family home permit that were issued in April. The next column is the one that I added last time for you, just to show you what inspections have occurred and how many have happened. If you recall, last time I indicated that there's about 12 inspections for every home. And this week I included this month I included a new column over to the right, and it's called permits closed or occupancy. So if everything is completed, occupancy is granted to a habitable space. In this case, there was a plumbing permit that was issued back in September 2023, and it received all its inspections and is completed. Finally, just for summation, to date, there have been 10 residential permits issued. There's been 2 commercial permits, 1 variance, 1 development permit, 2 temporary use permits, and 4 zoning bylaw amendments. Just for clarity, the zoning bylaw amendments have all been by staff to make changes or improve the functionality of the zoning bylaw. And that concludes my comments for this project.
Thank you. So we have a recommended motion here to accept this report for information. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Lightfoot, seconder. Councillor McCann, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Lightfoot.
So I think we can congratulate 124 as the first permit that's been finished, occupancy. Is that correct?
Well, it was an old.
That was just
permit. It was for plumbing.
That's across the street from.
Yeah, it was a renovation kind of job that was done there.
Oh, it's Miles' house. Okay. Yeah. Darn, I was thinking it was the one on Fraser Street.
Yeah.
Okay. We're still awaiting the
Yeah,
final
yeah.
Occupancy permit for the new builds.
That's right.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Questions or comments?
Thank you, Berta.
Yeah, thank you, Berta. And it's so nice to see those numbers going up. So look forward to the next report. Thank you. All right, so now item number 2.2, which is the tiny and carriage house information report. So that's you as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it is going to be me as well. I think I'm doing all the presentations tonight from the development side, so I'll be jumping right into this one. And again, I'll just share my screen. There it is. I trust you can all see the screen on your screen
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Okay, so this particular report is in response to a letter that was received by council from Mint Tiny Homes at the last meeting on April 23rd. I just wanted to go into a little bit of history on homes. Homes that we normally talk about are what's considered stick construction. In other words, they've been built by hand. But kits have been around forever and are becoming more popular again. And they have become popular in the past whenever there's a housing shortage. For instance, after the war, we saw a lot of people ordering their homes from Sears and putting them together. I know in the 1918, there was a big push. I myself lived in a typical kit home that was built in 1942 after the Second World War. And here's some images that probably strike a chord for everyone in the room. The kit or factory-built homes have changed predominantly to mobile homes from the 1970s or earlier to modern manufactured homes. Manufactured homes are on a permanent foundation are permitted by the zoning bylaw. And that was a change we made since we've been together working. In planning, we are concerned with the use rather than the form of constructions. There are certain bylaw regulations that reflect fire separation distances and fire mitigation objectives. In November 2023, the restriction on house size that was originally in the zoning bylaw was removed for residential zones. Further, secondary suites are permitted in all residential zones. However, the concept of a second dwelling on the property was not considered at that time. And as you can see on the screen, these are some of the things that just ensure that there's fire separation between buildings and that there's a safety component. Many municipalities allow a secondary suite in a separate structure on a lot. Generally, they're called carriage houses or garden suites. The official community plan for Lytton does allow for expansion of this type of housing typology. In conclusion, the report before you seeks to provide you with information with the option for the option to direct staff to suggest changes to the zoning bylaw to allow 2 dwellings on one property. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions, sir, for Alberta here? I'm curious about, sorry, you took the slide down. Put the motion on? Yeah, we could put the motion forward. But well, could you put the slide back up?
I'm in
slide?
process. Sorry, it's
Yeah,
not
no
quite as
problem.
fast as I'd like it to be. There you go. I think you got it.
Direct staff to make recommendations on changes to the zoning bylaw to allow 2 dwellings on one legal property. So at this point in time, I just wanted to confirm this. At this point in time, we only allow, our bylaw reads, we only can have 1 residential building on a property. Is that correct?
Your worship, that's correct, but you are allowed to have a secondary suite in it. So you are allowed to have 2 dwelling units. They're just in one building.
In one building. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that clears that. Okay, let's put the motion forward to accept this for report for information. Councillor Lightfoot.
I'll move that council receive the information report on tiny and carriage houses for information.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Second toss.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Alberta regarding this? And Councillor Lightfoot.
No, I'll just withdraw, sorry.
Okay, and all those in favor? Carried. All right.
No.
Councillor Toss, did you have something to
Yeah,
add?
thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I was hoping to follow up on your recommendation, Berta, with the second option for moving forward. And I'd like to put a motion on the table to direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment to permit detached secondary suites. And Berta, if there's a better way to phrase that, to encapsulate what we want, maybe moving forward, please help me out with the wording, but I don't know if, did you get that?
So if I, Mayor, if I, Your Worship, if I may interject, what we had recommended as a possible second wording is to explore secondary suites in detached dwellings. So essentially, that's exactly the same thing as you're talking about. Like I said, there's so many different terminologies.
Sure.
A secondary suite in a separate dwelling, a secondary suite, as you indicated, in a detached dwelling, or we can call, I think the province is now calling them, oh, they have an interesting acronym for them as well. But I think what we're all talking about is a separate unit on the property in a separate building with its separate walls. And that's how we understand what you're directing us to do.
Thank you.
Okay. A seconder, please, for that motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And were there any further comments or questions? Councillor Lightfoot.
I guess the comment I'd like to make is, I think the motion as it was worded directs staff to come back with a bylaw, and a bylaw takes quite a bit of effort. I would be more interested in having a report come back that would expose some of the challenges. I would assume that there's probably a minimum size lot. We've got, you know, a variety of sizes of lots. Most of them are 50 by 100, but, and then move into the bylaw if all those concerns could be discussed and addressed. But
Are there any other?
I'm comfortable with
Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, I'm pretty comfortable with the motion as it reads, because we'll have the opportunity to massage it, as it were, and look at those, I think specifically maybe fire mitigation concerns. But yeah, I'd like to leave it on the table as is, if possible.
Okay, other comments or questions? Councillor McCann, did you have something or no?
No, I was just thinking along the same lines of just making it a report that addresses, and
Yeah.
Beerta does that already. She covers all the bases, and that's basically, I think, what we're asking is an opportunity to really look at it thoroughly and what the implications are. We're doing that.
Councillor Michelle, did you have? Okay. Do you have any feedback at this point around developing a bylaw and the timeline that would take, or does anyone have any? I'm not sure.
Your worship, it will really depend on what you decide to do with the next item that we're bringing forward to you. We can propose something in the very short term in terms of what we're looking at in terms of timelines. I myself have done a lot of work in this area previously in another municipality that I worked in. So I don't foresee it being too onerous, but at this moment, without knowing your results for the next item on the agenda, I can't commit.
Okay. All right, so Councillor Lightfoot.
Within our current bylaw, is it possible to have a variance to allow 2 small buildings on our lots?
Your worship, no, that's generally not permitted. There's 2 things through the Local Government Act that we cannot vary. One is use and the other is density. Putting
Okay.
2 separate homes on a property is often determined as density, and that is something we can't vary. That's why it's something we should be addressing at this point in time. I don't know if you recall that in January when we spoke about the provincial direction as well, at that time we had indicated that it might be an idea to start exploring carriage houses, and I'm sorry, that's the terminology I use, but secondary suites in detached dwellings as an option for Lytton going into the future.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, all those in favor? Opposed? No, we're all good. Sorry, carried.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to item number 2.3, which is the OCP permit area project strategy update. And Beerta, it's you again.
Okay, sorry about that. I just had to find my mute button here. I've got too many buttons going. Again, your worship, I'm happy to provide this report to you. And as indicated, it is regarding the development permit and temporary use areas project strategy update. So just in terms of background, as we all probably recall, in April 2023, Council by resolution suspended official community plan permits, reviewing and accepting maps, defining each development permit area, and reconsidering the relevance of the guidelines was put aside while more pressing priorities were addressed. On August 9th, Council directed staff to proceed with the OCP permit areas project in accordance with the project plan presented to you. We have completed phase 1, and with this report would like to stage the reporting out to Council. There are 2 development permit areas and 3 temporary use permit areas currently described in the official community plan. As you know, none of these have any maps as they were not recoverable. We propose that the existing development permit areas be simplified into a natural hazard and sensitive environment development permit areas and a single development permit area and temporary use permit area to be established. The report to Council provides a description of each one of the proposed replacement areas. There's a vast amount of information to share. Therefore, we recommend a series of reports to address each. The details are outlined in the table as shown on the slide and in your report. Once the information reports have been presented and received by Council, then we would like to propose to bring forward proposed bylaw changes. If council agrees with the proposed wording, referral to agencies, stakeholders, and partners for comment would occur, and then this information would be brought back to council in a subsequent meeting. Staff, however, have a request. We ask that council consider engaging a qualified environmental professional to ground truth the available mapping of riparian areas. Riparian areas are generally adjacent to bodies of water, such as streams, lakes, and ponds, and the province has, since your OC was put in place, really refined regulations around it. It is felt that the land has changed enough to warrant looking at the ground and, like I said, ground truthing information through a professional report. That concludes my comments. Have you got any questions?
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll put the recommended motion on, and it is a two-part motion. Who would like to make that recommended motion? Councillor Lightfoot and a seconder. Councillor McCann. So now are there any questions or comments regarding this?
Did I miss it? There's no cost involved. Or did I miss that? Is it just part of the staff work? Or were you?
Financial impact, financial impact, 21 million provincial funding envelope, ongoing implementation. Part of the budgets and implementation process. Page 22 of 44.
So what they're suggesting is the professional is hired to do the report, so that will come out of the grant planning.
So find out.
Are there any other comments or questions?
What areas are we talking about? Lytton Creek for sure. Is there any other areas that are kind of highlighted here that we're going to need some attention spent on?
Yes, there are. Thank you, Worship. We had talked to Brian. I see him sitting at the table there at one point, identifying all the things that the province sees as creeks, and we know that they no longer exist. It is because of that reason, having someone come in and actually ground truth what is in fact a creek or a stream versus what isn't is going to be very, very essential in this case.
And we have to remember that the village boundaries is not just downtown here, it's out all the way out to the airport and out to the sawmill site. So it's a big area.
No.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All those in favor? Carried. All right. Thank you so much for those three reports. We're going to move on to item number 9.1, which is bylaws. And we have the Growing Communities Reserve Fund.
You missed Public Works.
I missed Public Works. I apologize, Brian, here. All right, Public Works, Brian.
Thanks, Mayor O'Connor. I'm just bringing back to you an update on the temporary storage shed that we've been renovating at the sawmill, where Mayor and Council approved $129,000 renovation budget in January of this year. Just an update where we're at with that. We have installed the overhead doors, just looking at quotes to get the wiring done. We have a couple man doors on order as well. The electricity is in the building. There was a bit of an additional cost to that, given that we had to bring in high voltage team to do the switch over, because somebody had stolen the copper ground wire off the switch pole. We did get a donation of 6 8-foot LED overhead lights that were installed by BNR Electric, who donated the lights and did the electrical hookup for us. So much appreciated there. Of the $129,000 that we've allocated towards the storage shed, we've spent $33,536 to date, with $95,463.50 remaining. I'm looking for 2 resolutions from council tonight. One being that we continue with this project moving forward, and the second being that we schedule a photo opportunity and a thank you to False Creek Alliance, who assisted with the construction of the walls, materials, and engineered design to a total of approximately $50,000 worth of value. I don't know how much more we could say thank you to them, but if we could arrange a photo op with fire, rescue, mayor and council and all those involved, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Great, thank you. So we have a two-part recommended motion. Councillor McCann and a seconder. Councillor Toss, questions or comments?
I want to add to the second recommendation.
Okay,
Who was that person that donated the lights?
Yeah.
BNR, can they come to the party?
Yeah, we can invite you.
I like to have lots of people there. No, that's a significant donation. I'd like to see them recognized just as well. So if we could amend the part where it says and Falls Creek Alliance as well as BNR Electric representatives, then I'm all good with that.
is there anyone else we should be including?
Maybe you could word it in such a manner that all contractors who've been involved, because I think everybody's
There you go.
given a little bit extra effort on this project.
Thank you. So do you have a suggested date at this time? Or
No, I'd have to check with them. They are busy with the bridge replacement down at Jackass, so it would be a matter of coordinating it with staff or with mayor and council as well as their staff
And fire rescue.
and fire rescue as well, who is kind of busy as well right now. So
that sounds good.
it'll be probably, I would think, over the next few weeks, like within the next month.
Good. Councillor Toss.
Just throwing out maybe the recognition on the 30th for the fire
Yeah.
brigades might be a nice tie-in, and we'd already be gathering for recognition. I'm just throwing it out there, but something to think about. But I also wanted to comment on so far under budget.
Oh,
So far, I know it's a work in progress, and there's a lot of generous people part of that, but it's nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, now we're on to item number 9.1, bylaws, the Growing Communities Reserve Fund, CAO Montfort Cat.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I just have a couple comments to make on this. This was a one-time grant that was received in 2023 from the province of British Columbia, $619,000 for Lytton. It is required that if the funds have not been spent, that they get placed into a reserve fund. So we have recorded that in the financials. You'll see that when we go through those in a little bit. And we'd like to have the bylaw to pass the bylaw to have the reserve created.
Thank you. So we have a recommended motion. Councillor Lightfoot and a seconder.
I'll second.
Great. And this, of course, is to pass the first three readings. Any comments or questions regarding? Are you aware, I know this was a one-time last year. Have we heard anything? Will there be anything this year? Do you know?
I'm sorry, have we heard what? Sorry.
Have we heard any announcements from the federal government that this Growing Community Fund will be available this year as well?
Yeah, it won't be available this year. There's no expectation that it will be available again. It was really a one-time grant.
I do remember when that was announced last year. Okay, no other comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. Now we have no correspondence tonight, and we are going to move on to verbal reports. And I know we just had a council meeting last week where we gave verbal reports, and this tonight, of course, it's only a week later, and don't have a lot to report. But I will say that, last Friday, all of council and Director Thorpe met with Interior Health regarding the permanent rebuild of our medical center. And I think it was a really good meeting. We met with Karen Cooper and Jamie Shipmaker. And we had 2 hours of discussion. We talked everything from the current services of today to future services to the rebuilding of the facility. And, you know, some good things came out of it. I think we definitely heard that they are at least talking and seem to be working on the permanent rebuild. We heard that possibly we'll have, you know, see some concept plans coming out in the next short while. So that was, I thought that was quite encouraging. Really, that's the only major meeting that I attended. With our upcoming 3rd-year anniversary of the fire, which is just a little over a month, I guess 6 weeks away, I've noticed that the media has been starting to draw some attention. So this afternoon, actually, I met along with Councillor Michelle. We met with a reporter from the Globe and Mail who's doing a story on the rebuilding. So it was really nice to see that positive media on the buildings that are going up and things that are happening. So that's really all I have to share. I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I have not a lot to report. I also attended the Interior Health meeting, which was very positive and exciting that they're moving forward and pretty focused. I have the chamber meeting tomorrow evening as the council delegate, and want to remind everyone that the chamber and the museum are doing membership drives. So help support our local institutions. And yeah, that's about all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Oh, thank you. It was still a busy week. Yep. I went to several meetings. One of the meetings I'd like to kind of update people here about is the Spentland Park group. And so there was, it took a long time to get everybody organized, but we finally were able to connect and talk more about the park and the plan. So recently, the task force members went on a walkabout with the ARC people, with AEW, and talked about archaeological impacts in the site. And then the contractor went away, and then she came back with an update based on that information. So a couple of things. First thing is a goal now is to create a floating surface for park landscaping. So rather than digging down, we will be raising out. So Peggy was concerned about an area in the back here that is prone to flooding. So I'm pretty sure that is not going to be an issue with the new amount of dirt that probably it'll be filled similar to what we've seen in town. But the concept, you've probably looked at the plan. In the back, there's a sort of a central gazebo. And so that will be the high point. And then everything will kind of gradually slope down from there. Instead of putting fence posts around the park and memorial out here, there will be gabion walls. So, and we're using local stone. So we're looking more at integrating local materials and local features. Some of the stuff that she suggested was really quite inspiring. I was really excited to see some of the ideas that she's working with. The landscaping, I know this question has come up several times, and so it is clarified. Landscaping will have fire smart criteria, right? So any plants that go in are the kind of plants that can be there. There are less plants and trees because you have to dig to plant trees. So we do less digging. So there's going to be less trees planted, but there are already trees out there. And so it's about strategically placing things now, I think. We did talk about lighting, just in case that is an issue people are wondering about. So there will be overhead lighting and ground lighting as well, so that when you're walking along the path will be lit. When you're out here on the dark side of the wall, there will be lights so that won't be an area of concern. And another thing, that it is a storied park. So this park is not a recreation place. This is a place to tell the story from the beginning of time and ongoing in this area. So it'll largely have a First Nations perspective because that's the people who are here. And so they'll tell the story, and there'll be storyboards at strategic points. And at this point in time, the task force is working with different people to come together and to write that story and get the amount and the writing and everything done to a point where they know how many panels there'll be, where those panels will be, and so on. So it's starting to get really interesting. It's kind of getting pretty exciting. I actually reached out to Kevin Loring to see if he'd write any of those things. Hey, he'd be the perfect person to do that. So our responsibility for the our part of the park is there'll be number, but as far as the stories are concerned, we would like to include a memorial to those who lost their lives in the fire as part of the story being told. And so that will come back on us to find a way to do that and to find appropriate ways to incorporate that into the park. Okay, so that's kind of going to come back to council. I also, of course, went to Interior Health. I was quite intrigued by some of the things that we were learning about and understanding terms, critical care and emergency care and what is it called now?
PCC plus.
I will eventually learn that. I think I have a mental block that's making me not want to learn that.
Primary cares.
Yeah, primary care, urgent primary care. No, I don't know. I still haven't got it. Anyway, then there was yesterday's coffee session, which if you were here, were you here? Oh my goodness, it was amazing. It was flipping amazing. I don't know if it was Peggy or the bishop, but I'm telling you, there were so many people here and it was just this buzz. Everyone was excited to see. And then the mayor brought out something for everybody to look at and to respond to. And that got even more conversation going. So it was really worth being here yesterday. I thought I was glad I was here to enjoy part of it. So thanks to everyone who came and see, there's Peggy. Peggy, thank you for coming. And Judith, thank you for coming because it was awesome to have you guys here yesterday. Yeah, that's my report.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Michelle. Nothing to report this time. Okay. And Councillor Lightfoot.
Not a lot to report. I was glad to sit with IHA and hear that they're moving things ahead. And I think they're pretty ambitious and they're focused on having our services returned as soon as we can. That was encouraging.
Good.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, I think, this council meeting will have more to report between 2 weeks between the council meetings. All right. So we're going to move on and we're going to move on to item number 6, which is we had moved it to after council reports. And we have a guest coming on, Mario Parati, partner of BDO Canada LLP, who's going to be presenting our 2023 audited financial statements. And I'm not sure if there he is. He made it. Great. Hi, Mario. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back here tonight virtually.
Yeah.
And also careful what you wish for. When we talked back in January, I said you would be hearing from me a lot sooner this year.
Well, that's right. And I know it was January that we received the 2022 financial statements. And now we've got the, thanks to the hard work of our financial team at the village, we have the 2023 financial.
Absolutely. I take very little credit for getting it here. It was the hard work of your team that got it here. So I want to start with that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just turn it over to you then.
Okay.
And, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'll pull up the financial statements on screen, but as mentioned, we have the December 2023 financial statements for the Village of Lytton to present to you. The financial statements in your package are still marked as draft, and as a reminder, this is because I cannot sign off on the audit until those charged with governance, which the community charter defines as mayor and council, have had a chance to review and approve the financial statements. If it's council's pleasure to approve the statements in tonight's open meeting, I will be signing off on the audit report and they will get submitted on time tomorrow to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So I'll walk you through the financial statements highlights and open it up for any questions that you have. But before we get to that, I always like to start and remind everybody of the management's responsibility for financial reporting page. And this is an important page because it defines what everybody in this room, present or virtually, has to do as part of getting these statements outside or getting these statements approved and finalized. And so the financial statements are the responsibility of management, and they will be approved by mayor and council. The financial statements are actually prepared by management. While we do assist them in summarizing it up into this final 32-page document, it's important to remember that all the information coming in is prepared by management throughout the year, not just when we come in and do the year-end process. And having everything caught up was one of the big reasons why we were able to get it done, because everything was in on time, and so we were able to go and aggregate the financial statements. The management also maintains a system of administrative and internal controls, and these controls are there to protect the assets of the village and to also make sure that good information goes into your accounting systems so that we get good information to get summarized into the financial statements. Mayor and council is responsible for making sure that management is fulfilling their duties throughout the year, not just when we conduct the audit. This is why you receive regular updates from your finance team, and also why you make sure that you're aware of items like check signing policies, and you're reviewing grants, significant grants, approving major capital projects, because that's part of your governance. And ultimately, you will be the ones approving the financial statements. Our job, which seems very simple, is to come in and do an audit over the financial statements. And if it is council's pleasure to approve the financial statements, we are going to be issuing a modified audit opinion this year. Now, if we think back to what was issued over the past couple of years, we did not have a clean audit opinion on those 2 years. But for the last 2 years, we actually denied issuing an audit opinion because of the records that were destroyed during the fires. This year, we are issuing a qualified opinion. So what that means is that when we look at this year's financial statement numbers, we are saying that those numbers do present fairly the results of the Village of Lytton for the year ended December 31st, 2023. So those numbers are good. We're not dealing with, we weren't able to express an opinion because of the records being lost. Now, we're going to stop and pause on 2 items on here. The first is, we still know that last year's numbers, while we feel that they are accurate, there could have been some information that was missing in the opening numbers from 2021, which impacts 2022. So that opinion still lingers over last year, but 2023 is good. The other reason why we're not issuing a clean opinion is twofold. One is, until the construction's fully underway, we don't know how the infrastructure underground, or if there's any other capital assets or infrastructure that needs to be written off. And so we're hoping that by the end of 2024, that we'll know that information, as we now see that there's significant progress being made. The other item that is tied into your capital assets is that there is a new accounting standard that came into place this year that requires any government across Canada to record any legal obligation that they have to decommission assets at the end of life. The simplest example of this is, if you have asbestos in your walls, there's an obligation to remediate it, there's an additional cost, and we have to show that as a liability on the financial statements. Now, in your situation, again, until we're further down the recovery road, we know if there's any other assets that need to be written off. It's not really effective to go through the exercise of adopting this standard, because there's information that we may not know. So as we come through and finish the recovery, these items will go away, but these items are only impacting your capital. In terms of your operations, the final numbers and the numbers reported in your statement of operations in terms of your operating revenues and expenses, we are issuing a clean opinion on those. So I'm going to stop there quickly, just because I talked a lot of technical. I don't like having to talk a lot of technical, but I do have to explain the opinion that last year's numbers we think are good. There could be information that we were still missing. This year's operating numbers, clean opinion. Capital, we're waiting on the rebuild, because that's going to be when we know if there's any other adjustments we need to make on capital, is really the 3 buckets that we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
we have a motion to put forward.
But
Yes, sorry.
sorry, we will go through the statements before we put the motion
I
forward.
apologize. Yeah.
But I just wanted to I wanted to kind of get the noise of the opinion out of the way and explain, here's what's good, here's what we're still waiting on, and just want to make sure that you were okay with that piece.
So, no, okay. So are there any questions regarding that piece? No, okay.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So now let's see how you did this year. So when it comes to the statement of financial position, this is your assets and liabilities at the end of December 31st, 2023, compared to 2022. And we see a lot of noise in here because we could see that your total financial assets, so cash you have and cash that will be coming in through accounts receivable, mainly grants that are still coming in, that decreased by nearly $5 million from 24.4 million to 19.6 million. But the flip side is that your obligations decreased by a similar amount, from 17 million down to $12 million. And we see that the big change in there is just what was outstanding in terms of what you owed contractors and other suppliers at the end of the year. A bit of a timing difference. Your net financial assets, which is your net position, if we take all the money you have or will get, less your obligations, what's left in the bank. That only moved by $500,000, which is kind of what we would expect right now, given the current state that you're in. You're getting the additional government funding and everything else there. So we would expect that number to stay fairly consistent, even though we can see that the two main components that move it up or down have changed quite a bit. When we move on to the statement of operations, so we're talking all the revenues and expenses that you have in the year. What's interesting to see here is, when we look at your taxation, fairly close to where you were budgeting. When we look at your sale of services, down from budget, we were expecting to be further along the recovery path at this point. But everything on the operating side is fairly close. Where we do see the big swing is the recovery funding, which is made up, of course, of insurance and also your government grants that are coming in. $22 million last year, $14.6 million this year. We also see that on the expense side, on the recovery side, that we saw a decrease from 19.3 million last year to $17.4 million this year. And so again, we're seeing a decrease in the revenues and a decrease on the expense side when it comes to the recovery. Everything else on the expense side is fairly known because of, right now, the way that the village is operating. So it's more important to focus on where the recovery is at. And your net annual surplus came in at $721,000 versus a budgeted surplus of $850,000. So again, very close to your budget. There's just a lot of ups and downs when we get there, but the overall position is very close to where you were anticipating to get. And now, when we look at the context of your surplus for the year, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight here. And even though this year was very innocuous in terms of, you had an annual surplus of $721,000, for accounting purposes, you budgeted for a surplus of $850,000. But we have to remember that going forward, there's going to be a lot of capital projects that you're going to be having coming in. And when capital projects happen, we get a bit of a disconnect between the financial statements and what you budgeted for in the financial plan. And the reason for that is that in your financial plan, when you have and you prepare your budget, your capital projects are an expense in that document, but on the financial statements, it becomes an asset. And so it's an important distinction, because as we start to build capital next year, I anticipate that your financial plan is going to show, both in the financial plan and in your actuals, there's going to be a large surplus on your financial statements. That doesn't mean that you made a bunch of money and that you're hoarding a bunch of money. This page will show you then how much you spent on your capital to get you back to what your actual surplus is. So I just wanted to plant that seed that While this year this looks fairly normal, as we end up spending more capital and capital funded by grants, it's going to create accounting surpluses, even though it doesn't mean that you actually ended up with surplus money in the bank. So a precursor, nothing that we have to really worry about right now. And I'm going to touch on this as well now as we move into the notes. So before we get back to your surpluses, I also wanted to highlight your deferred revenue because obviously there was a lot of money that was fronted in particular by, the provincial government. And so this note here shows what you have in terms of core funding. We've recognized into revenue your 2022 through 2024 core funding because that's all based on one funding agreement. So all of that's been recognized. There's nothing left in deferred revenue there. However, it's a separate agreement for your 2025 and 2026 core funding, the 2.1 million. At the start of 2025, that 2.1 million will go into revenue and any unspent portion will end up in your reserve funds. So just showing we can see, the money that's been received for core funding and how it's being split out. And then also we have the recovery grants, which are predominantly based on capital and rebuild and have stipulations attached to it. We have $6 million remaining of those grants here. And then also the Municipal Affairs Wildfire Response Grant, $1.6 million remaining sitting in deferred revenue. So just highlighting on where the provincial money is sitting right now. Long-term debt, you did pay off your MFA loan this year. So now you are mortgage-free in the village, which I know was something that was discussed during the early days of the recovery as well. Now, we're going to talk a bit about your surpluses. Don't know why the page jumped there. We're going to talk a little bit about your surpluses. The village has a total accumulated surplus of $14 million, up from $13.3 million last year. And this page breaks down the three buckets that we have in here. Your unrestricted surplus sits at $4 million. And what this number represents is what money your management team has to spend that's not restricted to execute the approved budget. So that's their money to keep the lights on and to work towards the rebuild that they can do in accordance with what was approved in the budget. Your reserves are sitting at $3.6 million. This is money that has been set aside either by council or in the case of something like core operation funding by the province, which is there to be used for, as we saw, this is what's unspent from 2022 and 2023, and then also your 2024 funding is in there. So there's 1.1 million left to be spent by the end of next year for that funding piece. One of the observations that we have, and we've made the recommendation to management, and I know that they've already been looking towards this, is that at some point they're going to come to you as you get further down the path of, we need to refresh what our reserves are sitting at, because these reserve funds, a lot of these were pre-2020. And so obviously there's been significant changes in the village. And so now this is council's opportunity to go and set the tone of, when we have $3.6 million in the bank, how do we want to save for the future and utilize that money? And that'll be something that, we're encouraging management to come with you towards. So of this $14 million, we have $8 million, which is cash. And I normally start with invested intangible capital assets, but I'm going to end on this because this is an important one, which again, I want to plant the seed for what 2024 and 2025 statements are going to bring to you. The invested intangible capital asset number represents an accounting of what we've spent since the beginning of time on our infrastructure, less any write-offs, less any debt that we owe on it. And so really I always equate it to being like the equity in your home. And when we look at this $6.3 million number, it makes up just under half of your accumulated surplus today. But what's going to happen in the coming years, when we talk about how you're going to be starting to show surpluses as the capital projects come in. This is where those surpluses are going to land. And so this number is going to grow. And you're going to start to see that your surplus, your accumulated surplus is going to grow, but you're going to say that, well, we don't have that money in the bank. And so that's why it's going to be growing, is that it's going to be because as you spend on capital projects, it grows your surplus. And so that's just something to think about for next year, that it's going to be there, because there's going to be some changes to the statements where right now they make sense, they're easy to understand, but there's going to be some changes that aren't going to always be obvious that I wanted to make sure that we spent a bit of time talking about today as well. So I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
And now I'm going to open up for questions and see if I confused everybody, because again, I got into a little bit more technical than I normally like to do. But again, I want to make sure that I'm also trying to help prepare you for how the statements are going to be adjusted going forward as well.
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll put the motion on the floor to accept your report, and then we will ask questions. So can I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Can I get you to read it out?
I'll make the motion that council adopts the 2023 audited financial statements as presented by BDO Canada LLP at the regular council meeting held on May 14th, 2024.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lightfoot. Now, are there any questions or comments for Mario? Councillor Lightfoot.
I think I know the answer, but I was just curious, the loan we had with, and that we closed off, that was for the waste facility, the treatment. Was that correct?
I will defer to the CFO.
Yes, that is
Diane?
correct. That
Okay,
is
thanks, Diane. Okay.
That was then mortgage free? Is that?
Yeah.
Are there any other comments, questions? Lots of information there. Sure, Councillor Lightfoot.
I just want to say I appreciate the presentation you made. I know last year we had some discussion about the qualified overview or whatever of the statements, and you explained the circumstance that made that impossible last year, and you assured us that this year there would be that statement would be part of the presentation, and so I appreciate that, and also jogging my brain around not all assets are liquid funds. Some of them are just capital.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult one for myself and maybe some other people sometimes to keep that straight in our minds, because we go, oh, we're rich. No, you're not rich. You've got a house or whatever, right? So thanks for expanding on what we can anticipate next year. Excellent work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor McCann.
I just want to appreciate the effort to show how that shift is happening in what you have, what you can expect to see, how records are being kept, and just kind of keeping the movement from response from fire and having no records to now you got a few records and you can expect to see this, and just kind of showing that you've done a really good job of explaining like why things are the way they are. And to someone like me who's never had to look at this kind of stuff before, it's really, you make it easy to understand. And I just really appreciate our staff in making it easy for you to pull all that out and show us how great they are. Thank you.
If I
Okay.
can make a comment there, I think it's also important to recognize that the job that your staff does allows for us to be able to focus on those items as well. You know, even some communities that aren't in a situation like yours, we spend a lot more time trying to get things to the finish line, which means we're focusing on getting it through as opposed to being able to stop and pause and talk about this. So I think that's also very important to be said, and to recognize the efforts of your staff to being able to have these conversations as opposed to worrying about the little things.
Well, that feedback is greatly appreciated. It's really good news to hear. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so all those in favor? And carried. Thank you so much, Mario.
Thank you.
All right, before we move into closed meeting, we do have an item to be released from previous closed session. We had a resolution that council authorized the chief administrative officer to enter into a contract with RCS Construction Limited for the services of Brendan Nobes as owner's advisor construction from May 8th, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, to be paid from the EMCR recovery grant of 17.6 million. So that is an item that's released from closed, which now brings us to move into closed meeting. So we need we have a recommended motion here to move into closed meeting. Councillor McCann and a seconder. Councillor Toss, all those in favor? Carried. So thank you everyone for attending tonight's meeting. As we move into closed meeting, I will turn it back over to CO Poroshenko.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that concludes the public portion of the regular council meeting of May 14th, 2024. We ask that the public and staff please remove yourselves from the meeting as we go into our closed session. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting and have a wonderful night. And I also welcome council to take a brief recess as we reset.